Good morning and welcome everyone. Today's topic, we're going to be talking with Dr. Nicholas Long. You work at Children's and we're going to let him tell us about himself and his role. But today we're going to talk about supporting children during COVID-19, all our new normal and what that means for them. So let's go ahead and get started. And as always, use the chat box to ask your questions. And so, Dr. Long, tell us about your role at Children's Hospital and what you do.
Okay. I'm in the Department of Pediatrics. I'm a pediatric psychologist and professor of pediatrics, and have worked for UAMS here at Children's Hospital for just over 30 years. And my career is focused primarily in the area of parenting. How can we support parents, both in terms of general parenting issues within primary care or elsewhere, as well as helping parents when they're having difficulty with their children.
Gotcha. So with our new normal and in the midst of COVID-19, how has this changed your work and what you do?
Well, obviously my work, like everyone else's, clinically has changed with the restrictions on clinical care. We're moving to more telehealth services. I have a relatively small clinical load, but because I have grants and projects where we work in parenting education and we train home visitors around the state to work with parents of young children. So it's changed in terms of telehealth, but I'd say the biggest issue recently that impact me are things like this. A lot of questions regarding children and COVID-19 and how to talk to children about this, what parents can do to minimize the negative effects of COVID-19 on their families.
Yeah, absolutely. And so before we get too really far down into our conversation, I do want to have a disclaimer that I don't have any small children at home. So folks with small children, I'm hoping that you ask the real questions because because my daughter's grown and on her own, and so I have no small children. I'm not having to think about it in that way. So I guess my next question is just tell us a little bit about the difference between the way adults and children and this and how it affects them, like this COVID-19 and how this is affecting them. I know how it affects me, but how does it affect children?
Well, we really need to think about how complex it is to understand something like COVID-19. It's a challenge for many adults, but especially for young children. We have to think about brain development. And when we're talking about children under the age of 6, they think very concretely. Understanding something like a disease process is, most children are just not cognitively able to understand that, even if they're extremely intelligent. It has to do with brain development. So for young children, it's not what you say as much as what they see you doing. So they're going to take their understanding of what's going on, because they don't understand the complexities, based on how they see their parents behaving. If their parents are very calm and strong and in control, they're not going to tend to get anxious. If the parents seem very nervous, anxious, talking about it a lot, they're going to be more likely to become anxious. So it's really what we do more than what we say with young children in terms of communicating the current situation with COVID-19. As children get, around the age of 6 or 7 or so, they start thinking in more abstract terms, and up to kind of the age of 10, that 6 to 10 age range, they start understanding more abstract terms. So then they can get a basic understanding of the germ process, and you can keep things very basic. In fact, Children's Hospital on their website has a section on COVID-19, and one of the sections has to do with resources for children. And there's actually a coloring book that they can complete, and it kind of explains COVID-19 in very basic language for the children through coloring activities. And that's something good for young children. When you get into the teen years, they have more of an adult sense of what's going on. But again, even with teens, it's very important that we as parents show that we're being calm and in control here. If they see us as being out of control, they're going to get more anxious.
Yeah, that makes absolute sense. Yeah. for sure. I mean, and that kind of leads me to, you know, and this is a question I added, so I don't want to blindside you, but I mean, let's talk about social distancing and, you know, what that really means. I know what it means for me, meaning, you know, I work from home, I go in 1 day a week and I come back home, and the only other person I'm really talking to on a daily, you know, basis is my husband, of course, through Zoom meetings. But what does this mean for children? This whole social distancing thing.
Right. Well, I think there's obviously a lot of decisions that need to be made within a family. Most families don't socially distance themselves from other immediate family members.
Mm-hmm.
That may be different for some healthcare providers that are working on the front line and keeping a social distance there. So it really is an individual family specific issue. Older children are going to understand social distancing. Younger kids aren't. And so you can communicate social distance, just staying away. And in fact, we've got, my wife and I have young grandchildren, and what we did is we attached a 6-foot rope to 2 gloves that we inflated, and kind of used that as a measure. They would hold the glove at one hand and we would hold it the other, to give them a sense for what 6 feet is. Because for a young child, you know, what is 6 feet?
Right.
So we need to be very concrete in our explanations, especially to young children. And remember that it's not going to be just talking to our child once about it. Young child, it's something that's going to be repeated over and over again. And it's not, again, that they are being non-compliant to social distancing. It's just that they're not going to remember it. And we need to keep our patience in terms of knowing this is a long process, and they're going to need to be reminded of it on a frequent basis.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I really like that idea of like something concrete, you know, and using, you know, a rope, like this is 6 feet. I mean,
Right.
adults need it too. I see the lines at the grocery store where they tell you, here's the box where you wait.
Right. Yeah.
I think we all need that.
Uh-huh.
I guess when it comes to like parents and caregivers, and you know, you explain and you're doing everything right, but when should we start to worry, as far as, you know, maybe we're passing some of our anxiety on to our children? Like what are some signs that maybe we need to reel it in or do something different?
I think we take our cue from our children, and when we see significant changes in them, it may be mood, it may be sleep patterns, eating patterns, being socially withdrawn, especially with older kids who maintain a lot of contact through social media with their peer group. When you see them withdrawing from that, it's those significant changes that as parents we need to recognize and realize, you know, my child's having a more difficult time with this than I might realize.
Mm-hmm.
And then it becomes, you know, are there things that you can do within your family to help this? Or is it time to perhaps seek out some professional assistance? For all of us that are employed by UAMS, we have EAP and other resources and telehealth services regarding mental health. We also need to look at ourselves, because oftentimes when our children are having a difficult time, we're also having a difficult time. And we have to realize this is stressful for everyone. And we have to do a good job of controlling our stress. We have to be the major role models for our children. And if we're really stressed out, we can't help our children until we get our own stress under control.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a very valuable point, you know, as far as I can't expect my child to be okay if I'm not okay. Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That sort of thing. So from your professional perspective, what are some of your top concerns that maybe we're not considering or thinking about, and maybe parents aren't taking into consideration?
One of the things is exposure to television and media news. There hasn't been research, obviously, at this point, at least that I'm aware of, with COVID-19 and children. I know there are some ongoing studies or studies that are planned, but when we look at other crises, there have been research studies done of children in areas where there's been a natural disaster or war. And what they found is that children who watch more television coverage of that natural disaster, or you look at 9/11 as a great example too of this, uh, is that they have more anxiety and mental health issues. So, it's hard. It's hard for us to see the news. And when you start seeing what is on the media now, with bodies piled up in refrigerated trucks in New York City where they're doing mass burials. And you see those things, whether they're in video clips or photographs in the media. It's hard for us. It's really hard for children to understand. So the first thing I would recommend, parents, don't leave that TV on, really restrict what news coverage your child sees on television. That's important for all ages, but especially important for those young children that can't process that information very accurately.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I won't say that I haven't seen the meme out there on the internet about, no one's complaining about screen time now. And that's the first thing I think about is like, well, wait a second.
And I think we have to look at other things is using this time. Now, it's difficult if you're working from home and having children at home too. I mean, that's a real challenge. That's another whole issue. But, parents, have complained for years about not having enough quality time with their kids or just time alone with their kids. To use this to really have fun together, to try to plan activities that are fun and not having a lot of extraneous interference with those activities. I can't remember this offhand, but there's a saying, or at least when our children were young, we went to the Children's Museum in New Orleans, and at the entrance there was a saying that basically made the point that children learn best when they play with their parents. And that's playing with young kids, but also having activities even with older kids. So it's finding things that your child enjoys doing that you also enjoy doing. Can't be just one of you enjoys it or it's not going to work. And when you're both having fun doing things, and what you do, whether it's craft work or cooking or whatever the case may be, when you're having fun together, that's going to really deepen that relationship. And I hope, one of the positives that can come from this, we talk about all the negatives, but one of the positives that may come from this is a strengthening of the relationship between parents and their children if we handle it well. But we also know it's a stressful time. And on the flip side, there is a lot of concern about increases in child abuse, intimate partner violence during this time. So we've got to, again, monitor our own stress levels because we can't play and have fun and deepen that relationship with our children if we're totally stressed out. But I do think it's important to try to use this time to deepen our relationship with our kids, to read more with them, to do things that maybe normally we don't have enough time to do.
I am so glad you brought that up. On a daily basis, I know that I have to stop myself and think about the positives, on the bright side. Hey, I have a lot more free time. I don't have to spend so much time in the morning getting ready and I don't want to, I'm about to bust out Tim, but, before you jumped on the call, he was talking about the fact that, he has children that are in college, but they're back home, and how he's really enjoying this time, being together. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's one of the bright sides. I mean, Tim, I don't have to tell your story.
No, it is. It's just with the college campuses closed down. This is a time in life that, my wife and I knew was setting we just have a full house again and especially our kids. So, but now, just having them close by and being able to talk to them, even help us process through as adults and some of the things we're going through with COVID-19 in our workplace. And it's been very nice for us. But I know that that's generally with children with kids, they may not have that luxury that they can have those discussions with adult children.
And even, they may not be able to have that level of discussion with younger children, but even to talk about gratitude, what we're grateful for. One of the things that we did with our kids when they were younger and have continued to do now with our family and grandchildren is at special occasions like Thanksgiving, Christmas dinner, my wife did this as a child. They get 5 kernels of corn and put them in, everyone kind of takes a kernel at a time and talks about one thing that they're grateful for. And it's something that we've done more now, not just on special occasions, but just to talk more with our kids and grandkids about what it is we are grateful for now. And to put a positive spin on things for children too, because it's and not a spin, an inaccurate spin, but to talk about all the things that our people are doing, how people are coming together to help with this crisis. Whether it's making face masks or food deliveries to those that need food. And I've learned earlier this week about a company here in Little Rock called Ty, TY, I believe is their name. And they manufactured T-shirts and other clothing apparel for Adidas and Reebok. And they're located out in the Port District of Little Rock somewhere. And so they changed and started making face masks, and they're making 25,000 face masks a week now, made out of old T-shirt materials, and they're donating a lot of those. I know they made a donation to UAMS, and others are also selling them. But it's how people are doing things to help us. We're talking about this horrible virus and all the negative impact, but how people are doing great things. And I think it's one of the things that we can do as parents with older children. What is it we can do as a family to help others? And it may be making face masks for colleagues, or whatever the case is, but what can we do to help others who aren't as fortunate as we are in this time? There are a lot of people, all of us have jobs. I think all of us here, UAMS, we haven't been furloughed or laid off. We still have a steady income, but all of those individuals that don't, what can we do as individuals to help? Whether it's donating money, making things, let's do something as a family to show our gratitude for others that are struggling more than we are.
Mm-hmm. Yes, most definitely. So you've mentioned a few resources. What other resources are out there for people with small children or children at home that they may not be aware of? Or what are your favorite resources?
Okay, so I think one of the things is that there's a lot of, as with most things, a lot of inaccurate information out there online.
Okay.
So it's really getting parents, whether it's about COVID-19 or other issues, getting to accurate information. So we usually encourage parents to rely on more professional sites. So there's the American Academy of Pediatrics. For parents of very young children, there's an organization called 0 to 3. There's CDC, there's UAMS, there's the Arkansas Department of Health, there's Arkansas Children's Hospital. To try to, all of those sites have information on COVID-19 and families and what can be done. And others, it's those more professional sites that I'd recommend rather than relying on what they hear on social media.
Yes.
Which may be good, but oftentimes is not always accurate.
Right. Well, it might be entertaining.
Right.
Absolutely. So here's my catch-all question, and I like to ask it. Is there anything that, we've talked a lot about, supporting our children and talking to them concretely, and making sure we're, using this time in a positive way and, the right kind of resources. But is there anything that, maybe I should be asking, we should be asking that maybe we're not asking?
I'm not sure it's an ask, but one thing that I should have said before that I was thinking about is the importance of routine. And it's easy when kids aren't in school and we may not be working the same hours that we are, is children are creatures of routine and consistency. So I think it's really important to try to keep bedtime, time getting up in the morning, consistent, meal time, having planned activities. When children are at home and you're there, if you just kind of let things slide, it kind of gets back to at least what you were saying before. I mean, screen time is not necessarily bad, It's just moderation, like anything else. You don't want your kids sitting in front of the screen all day, and it's time on the screen and what they're actually viewing that's most important. But routine is important. So to try to have activities planned for children who are school age that are working remotely on their schoolwork, to have time during the day when they actually work on that. For younger kids to have, for those of us that have the ability, I mean, you set up workstations like they might have in preschool of things to do or things to make. So I think routine is important, and having their day filled with kind of planned activities as much as possible is important. It makes life more
Yeah.
normal that way.
Oh, most definitely. You know, I teach intro to communication at UALR, and it was a face-to-face class before everything happened. And let me tell you, going online, it has been a curveball for my students because they did not sign up for an online class. So I can imagine having small kids at home, and now everything's online, and you know what that means, and what that means for parents having to help their school age children navigate that. You know, because I see my students who are adults struggling, you know, with how are we going to do this, you know. And mind you, we have a speech. So I was just telling Tim, I'm like, we just did our second day of speeches over Zoom. And so that adapting is, you know, that's tough, not just for adults.
The other thing is to, I would really encourage parents to try to have as many meals together with their kids, not in front of the television. One interesting thing, this has nothing to do with COVID-19, is that there's been some research looking at adolescent issues, even related to substance abuse, and there is a relationship it's between the number of meals that families have together, children have together with their parents. It doesn't have to be every meal, but there's a critical number of meals per week that seems to be protective of children later on. So this is an opportunity where we have more opportunity to have meals together, because if we're working from home, we're there, we're not running late. But to use those meal times as not a time to talk about all the problems and issues, but to have it kind of a game thing. It may be with older kids, you kind of each write down questions and put them in a bowl, and people pick it out, and it can be anything from the favorite place you've ever been to your favorite book to those types of things that stimulate conversation between children and families, that you learn more about your kids and they learn more about you. What was your favorite childhood memory? What are things like that? And I think having that structure can really kind of open up lines of communication too, and again, strengthen that relationship. And that is one of the hopes, that perhaps for many families coming out of this, their relationships may be strengthened rather than weakened.
Yeah. So Tim, do we have any comments or?
Yeah, so actually, yeah, we did have a comment. Is someone suggested possibly having your kids help you with cooking or teaching them how to, and this is kind of a win-win. I mean, obviously you're teaching them a life skill,
right?
But I'm fortunate one of my adult kids is going to culinary school, so that really works out for me. But yeah, like another comment here from Practicing Gratitude. And we have heard this from others, and it's really great to hear this reinforced theme that we hear a lot of that, and how important that is for our kids, but even for our own health, our own state of mind, is practicing gratitude and keeping as positive as we can during these times. So we had some good comments and that kind of thing. But Dr. Long, they let you off easy. They didn't give you any kind of curveball questions.
Sure didn't.
Okay. Bring them on if you want. I will follow up on the cooking together. It's a great activity, and for young children, one of the problems we have now is that we're not teaching young children a lot of the life skills that are important, and especially for those of us that are more middle class, upper middle class families. Our kids are going off to college and don't have that ability to cook and to do things, ironing and washing. And so to involve kids in that, but with cooking and young children, to talk out loud about what you're doing and help them understand how you go through kind of solving problems. Or if you're trying to fix a leaky faucet in the house, have them help you, make it fun, but say, well, the faucet's leaking. We've got to figure out what's going on. Sometimes there's a thing called a washer in there, and we're going to turn off the water. Here, I'm going to twist this. You twist it a little bit more. Let's make sure it's off. We're going to unscrew this. I'm going to start, and then you can take the screw out. We're going to take this out, and we're going to replace this washer, and then you tighten it up, test it out, see if it's working now. Or whether it's cooking, following the directions of a recipe and how to measure things. That children may make a mess, but that's okay. The important thing is to make these activities fun and in a way of deepening relationships.
Okay.
And if you make them fun, kids are going to want to do it more, and then they're going to want to start cooking for you. And the other thing is one of the issues is maintaining contact with extended family. And I think one of the great things about our ability to do that now through FaceTime or Zoom is with grandparents or others in your extended family to really use that medium to get more connected. I mean, we have more contact with our grandkids who live here in the Little Rock area. Now, we would have them on weekends normally in the house. We haven't been doing that, but we do bedtime stories with them at night on FaceTime or Zoom. And it started where we were reading them stories, and now they read us stories. And so it's a way of we didn't have that kind of daily connection with them prior to this. So that's been kind of nice too.
Oh, what a great idea about a great use of technology.
Yeah.
Because I just think of like, oh, hey, say hi to grandma, but, actually doing something and, reading a bedtime story. That's what a great idea.
And Zoom is great. I mean, I never used Zoom until the last month,
Yeah,
but
right.
it really is nice, and FaceTime's good too.
That's all of us, yeah.
Right, yeah. Zoom has been really nice. I know for our grandkids and their parents able to put on the large screen TV the image of my wife and I, so it's better than an iPhone with FaceTime, where young kids especially can kind of see you. And we do animal parades and stuff like that across the screen. So it's trying to think of how to have fun outside the norm and using technology to continue that connection and relationship with those outside, those family members that are staying in the same home.
Yeah. So we're almost at the end of our time, and we've had some really great comments. Folks with kids, if you have any questions, here's your opportunity, because like I said in my disclaimer, I don't have any small ones at home, so this is time for you to ask your real questions. Looks like we got some comments in there. Let's see.
some suggestions. Some people were just kind of giving some comments to things and reinforcing that they'd love to invite their kids to cook and how it's worked out well for them. And someone, Jamie, mentioned a Marco Polo app, which is fun, and parents and sister, and even in Brooklyn, New York, and they all have it, and they download the app. And I guess it says here that you could record a video and they can watch it later and send one later. So anyhow, it's just another way to use technology to connect different members of family, even if they're geographically spread out. That's a way to just connect people together.
I will say on the Arkansas Children's website, under the area for children, there's a link to Go Noodle, which is an activity program for kids. And many of those exercises parents can do with their kids and do together. It was interesting. Our daughter-in-law was doing some yoga that was on I think YouTube or some TikTok. And our 4.5-year-old grandson started doing yoga too, and started getting in these same poses. And now it's become kind of a daily thing of the young kids doing yoga with their mom. So it's trying to think of we want to make sure our children are getting enough rest, nutrition, exercise. And the exercise part, we can do a lot with them now online, or going for walks. As I've driven around some neighborhoods here in Little Rock, especially in the late afternoon hours or on weekends, there are a lot of people out walking, and that's great from an exercise perspective, but it also gets back to that issue. When you're having fun with your kids and your kids are doing something fun with you, that relationship deepens. And so the more things we can do like that, I think the better. And we create just not, the negative memories of this time, but some of the positive memories of, I remember when I was little doing yoga with you, Mom, on, with YouTube. So let's create some of those good moments that children remember 10, 20, 30 years from now. And they will probably talk to their children about what they did during this time. And we want to make sure that there are some good memories, just not the negative memories.
Yeah, I love the idea of so many positive things coming out of this. And so, but thank you so much. We are at the end of our time. Thank you, Dr. Long, for spending 30 minutes with us. It was so informative. I have my whole page of notes.
Okay. Happy to. And I'd just like to offer for any of you that are participating today, if you do have any questions or follow up, I mean, my email is in the UAMS, is available there. So just please send me an email and I'd be happy to answer any questions you might think of later on.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right.
Okay.
Thank you, guys.
Okay.
Bye.
Goodbye.